Here are 10 incredible facts that will change your perspective. Welcome back, everyone. Here are 10 incredible facts that will change your perspective. Part 3. Number 10. In Finland, a minimum of 21 megabits per second. Internet speed is a fundamental human right. The United Nations has recognized access to the internet as a basic human right, and Finland was the first country to make it legal. Now there are only 2 prerequisites for getting access. You need to make a reasonable effort to get an internet connection, and you have to pay a fair price for it. But what's considered reasonable, and what's considered fair? Well, those are up to the citizens of Finland to decide. Number 9. A broken heart could be a legitimate cause of death. Next time, be careful with those love affairs. Next time, in 1999, the New England Journal of Medicine published a case study of a 34-year-old Japanese man who died from a broken heart. His name was Takao Arita, and he suffered from a condition known as kamochi shiki, which translates roughly to broken heart syndrome. He had complained of chest pain and difficulty breathing after his wife left him. At the hospital, doctors discovered that the left ventricle of his heart had temporarily expanded in size, which led to his death. Doctors believe that this could have been caused by a sudden surge in stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol. It might sound crazy, but medical experts say that this isn't unheard of. Dr. Ichiro Ogata, who oversaw Aria's case, estimated that 1 in 100 people die from a broken heart. So if you have a big fight with your significant other, you might want to spend the night out instead of staying home alone. Number 8. Seeing your own face can trigger disgust. Have you ever looked at your hand and thought, ew? According to research conducted at the University of Minnesota, when we see our own faces, we experience feelings of disgust. It doesn't matter if you're re-looking at your own face in a mirror or someone else's face in a photograph. Even the thought of seeing your own face can trigger this reaction. The reason why is still unknown, but it may have something to do with how our brains process self-related stimuli. Some experts also suggest that we unconsciously associate our own faces with the faces of disgusting animals, such as insects. And since nobody wants to look at an insect for too long, that's where the disgust comes from. No. 7. A broken heart could land you in jail. In 2011, Filipino Rolando Gomez was sentenced to 6 months in jail because he faked a heart attack to avoid paying a debt. He told his family that he was having a heart attack, and they rushed him to the nearest hospital. But once doctors examined him, they informed authorities that he wasn't actually having a heart attack. Instead, it seemed that Gomez had injured himself in order to collect insurance money. While faking a heart attack may not seem like a serious crime, it's considered fraud in the Philippines. Because of this, Gomez spent half a year behind bars. Apparently, he'd done something similar before, and was even featured on a local TV show for his antics. But since he couldn't pay his debts, he decided to fake another heart attack. Perhaps the best lesson here is to stick to one crazy stunt per year. Otherwise, you might find yourself spending more time in jail than you bargained for. 6. In the Ottoman Empire, a sultan's wife could only win his heart by passing a test. To become the favorite of the sultan, a woman had to impress him with her knowledge of music and poetry. And the most impressive way to do so was with a specially composed piece of music called a trazim. This would have to be played on a special instrument called a tanbur. In fact, some historians believe that the tanbur may have been the inspiration behind the modern guitar. But the trazmi wasn't just any song. Its lyrics had to include references to the sultan's mother and her family. If she passed this test, the sultan would then invite her to a private concert in his harem. There she would have to prove herself again by playing a sebha, a type of sacred music used in Muslim worship. If she passed this test, the sultan would finally take her to his private chambers to determine whether or not she was worthy of becoming his wife. Talk about a difficult job. No. 5. Using your right hand might feel more natural, but it's actually a learned behavior. Newborn babies can't tell the difference between their left and right hands. That's because the part of the brain that's responsible for spatial awareness, called the paracentral lobule, isn't fully developed at birth. For this reason, babies will randomly grab whatever object they see. It isn't until they reach about 6 months old that they start showing a preference for one hand over the other. Researchers believe this has to do with the way we're raised and the tools that we use. Since most cultures put babies into cradles, bassinets, or carriers, they usually end up spending more time holding their pacifiers or toys in their right hands. That's because their left hands are pressed against their bodies and held underneath their chin. Once they grow up and start using utensils, it becomes even more ingrained. Since most knives and forks are designed for right-handed people, left-handed people become the minority, and they often face ridicule. Not only that, but in many cultures, being left-handed is seen as a bad omen. In ancient Greece, left-handed people were considered sinister and evil. This is because they were often associated with sorcery and witchcraft. To learn more ways in which left-handed people are treated unfairly, check out our video on the dark side of being left-handed. 4. Living your life based on the Gregorian calendar is a Western tradition. In reality, there are dozens of different calendars used around the world. In Iran, Afghanistan, and some Muslim countries, they follow the Islamic calendar. In Ethiopia and Eritrea, they follow the Coptic calendar, which differs from the Gregorian calendar by 13 days. And in Thailand, Cambodia, and Laos, they follow the Thai solar calendar, which is 543 years ahead of the Gregorian calendar. Meanwhile, in Nepal, India, and Sri Lanka, they follow the Sri Lanka era, which is 21 years ahead of the Gregorian calendar. So if you've always wondered why all of these calendars are so confusing, now you know why. The only reason that most of the world follows the Gregorian calendar is because it was spread throughout Europe during the Middle Ages by the Roman Catholic Church. Today, there are a few other calendars that are used alongside the Gregorian calendar, such as the Persian calendar and the Hebrew calendar. But despite all of these alternatives, the Gregorian calendar continues to be widely accepted across the globe. After all, it's easy to forget that there are billions of people who live outside of the Western world. No. 3. The average American diet consists of more sugar than the sugar consumed by the average person in Russia. On average, Americans consume 152 pounds of added sugar every year. This translates to about 3 pounds of sugar per person per week. But what does that look like? Imagine taking 18 Kit Kats, 14 Snickers, or 8 Hershey's chocolate bars. Then add 61 teaspoons of table sugar to that. That's the average amount of sugar that the average American consumes in one day. Russians, on the other hand, consume less than half that amount, which translates to 30 teaspoons of added sugar per person per week. Where did all this sugar come from? Well, according to USA Today, people began eating more sugar after World War II. Back then, it was easier to preserve food thanks to advancements in technology. This meant that food was less likely to spoil, and that made it safer for the general public to consume. Over time, people started consuming more and more sugar, which resulted in rising rates of diabetes and obesity. No. 2. There are more trees on Earth than stars in the universe. NASA believes that there are somewhere between 100 and 400 billion stars in the universe. However, the number of trees on Earth is almost immeasurable. Scientists estimate that there are somewhere between 3 and 6 trillion trees on our planet. In other words, for every single tree on Earth, there are between 7 and 20 stars in the universe. That means that the forest ecosystem is much more vast than outer space. No one. The Pacific Ocean contains more plastic than fish. It's no secret that humans have polluted the ocean, but this fact really puts things into perspective. According to National Geographic, there are at least 5.25 trillion pieces of plastic debris in the ocean. This includes fishing nets, discarded plastic bags, and microfibers that have come off of washing machines. At least 269,000 tons of this debris float on the surface, while the rest has sunk to the bottom. Unfortunately, seabirds and fish often mistake plastic for food. They either eat the debris or get tangled in it, which kills them. One of the worst offenders is discarded fishing nets, which often get caught on coral reefs and kill hundreds of sea creatures every year. Thanks for watching. Which of these facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments below. Be sure to hit that subscribe button for more videos.